So, good evening, everybody, once again, and we are back with day 8 of this initiative called Daily Answer Wars and Daily Answer Wars Prime. So, again, today in the morning, we had given you a question, and numerous responses was received on the Telegram group, and we were quite happy to see those. I have also checked some of the copies, and again, we will be evaluating some of the copies and showing you the process of the answer evaluation in this session itself. But before that, we will try to discuss the question that was given and then move on to the evaluation part. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in the chat box and I will try to address them to the best of my abilities. Now, good evening, Shweta. So now let us move to the question that was given today. So we were taking GS1 topics right now. Yesterday also the question was related to the art and culture temple architecture part, and I discussed the question about Dravida and Nagara style yesterday. So now today we move on to Indus Valley civilization. Like this is also a very important topic, and once in a while questions are asked from this topic also. So the question today was progress in scientific advancements and innovative urban planning methods were the hallmarks of Harappan civilization. And the keyword was to elaborate. So basically, the question was given. Main theme of the answer was given in the question itself. You just needed to elaborate upon the points given in the question. That is, you needed to talk about the scientific advancements in the IVC period or the Harappan civilization period, and then you needed to talk about the urbanization and urban planning methods in that civilization itself. So these were the two main demands of the question that you needed to address, other than writing a good or decent introduction and conclusion. So if you were doing that part well, intro, conclusion, and addressing these two parts well, I think that it would have been enough to score decent marks in this answer. So this was a 15 marker, so it had enough scope. The main focus of this answer should have been on the content. Especially, I think this urban planning part was a bit easy because we hear a lot of news, and even nowadays also we talk about adopting some of the IVC period urban planning techniques in our urbanization or in present day urbanization. And this has also been a major theme of UPSC questions, that what all we can take from the Indus Valley civilization, urbanization, and incorporate in our periods. So prepare on those lines also. That has also been asked. So this was pretty easy. This urban planning methods. What you needed to write about, a bit brainstorm about, was the scientific advancements. In scientific advancements also, if you were smart enough, you could have done easily, because many things that we read at a glance are related to science. For example, this metallurgy, metal techniques, pottery techniques, and all of this could have been related to scientific advancements, and you could have framed points from there itself, as I will show you in this answer. So now let us start. In the beginning introduction, I have just talked about the time of the IVC. This was a decent enough introduction. There was a data point here which made the introduction like crisp. You could have also gone for talking about the whole. For example, I have just talked about the mature phase. The Harappan or Indus Valley civilization was a Bronze Age civilization whose mature phase lasted from circa 2600 BC to circa 1900 BC. So actually, the whole, if you talk about the whole period, it was from 3300 BC to 1300 BC most probably. So you could have talked about the whole period also, but the mature phase was what interests us the most, and the development was the maximum in this phase. So I have talked about this here, 2600 BC to 1900 BC. And the next statement is just a connecting statement, you can say. Harappan civilization marked the dawn of scientific advancements and urbanization in the Indian subcontinent. So this was just a connecting statement to show what is going to follow in my answer. So next we move on to the body of the question. So question in the first part, as I have told you, we usually try to go according to the flow of the question. So I have tried to address the scientific advancements part first. So scientific advancements during the Harappan civilization can be seen from. So next, you could have just talked about these points. I don't expect that you will write all of these points, but if you had picked 3, 4 of these points and written it in your paper in those 7, 8 minutes, I think that would have been pretty good enough to score decent marks. So first was weights and measurements. Now the people of Harappan civilization followed a standardized system of weights and measurements throughout the civilization. So this was a very important thing that they used to do in those periods, which was pretty uncommon in other civilizations. So the standardized system of weights and measurements may have found use in trade, commerce, and revenue collection. So since in the question it is given to elaborate, try to explain some of your points. Just writing the points here would not be pretty enough. So also the question is of 15 marks. So every point you need to back it up by some examples or explaining something about that point. So next point I move on to about talking about metallurgy. So the IVC people developed the use of metals in a scientific way. So here we hear a lot about metals in this period. So giving examples would have been a good idea. So I have talked about the examples. Various metals employed by the people of Harappan civilization include gold, silver, copper, lapis lazuli, turquoise, amethyst. So you can give 3 4 examples. That will be enough. I think alloys like bronze were common, and this was the Bronze Age also. So this is a pretty generic point which you could have inserted. Example: the bronze dancing girl sculpture from Mohenjo-daro using the lost wax technique. Now this diagram is also there in almost all of the books that you will read on IVC. So it immediately comes to the mind about when you talk about metals in IVC. So I have mentioned this example. Next, I go on to talk about management of water. This was also pretty famous in that period because of those systems, those reservoirs that were found. The people used to store water when it was in abundance, and then use it afterwards when the seasonal availability of water was low. So I've talked about that only here. IVC showed significant innovation in water management techniques for the purpose of agriculture, drainage management, household use, etc. Harappans developed an elaborate system of canals and water networks to leverage the seasonal availability of water. So what they used, they made these artificial reservoirs, and in places like Girnar, it is famous canal systems, wells, etc. And they used it in off season, like when rainfall was low and all. Next, we can talk about this medical sciences. This is proper surgery thing was first found in that period only. This evidence of trepanation, whole key surgery. This trepanation is actually a surgery of the skull. So what they did was they made a hole in the skull and used to do perform the surgery to remove parts of skull. So that was found in initial parts in initial periods in Kalibangan and Lothal. So you could have talked about this. Next, I move on to talking about mathematics. The concept of numbers and the numerical system, symbols, and processes like addition and multiplication existed in the Harappan civilization. So now again we have to back it by giving some examples. So I've talked about standardized bricks, that Harappans were well versed in geometry and mathematics. So all of the bricks, when the burnt bricks were of the same size. So it means that they had something which they used to measure the size of and then use. So I think from there I have derived this point. Next, I have talked about ability to control fire. This is also a basic point which I have again tried to innovate a bit. The people of Harappan civilization displayed the scientific ability to control fire. Now fire is an important discovery. So use of fire for making burnt bricks, fired pottery, without fire, all of this can't be done. So I talked about the ability to control fire. So all of these are good points, and you could have just mentioned three, four of these for like in your answer. Any other innovative points are also welcome. We will discuss that when we move on to the specific answer copies. Now let us talk about the achievements in urbanization. This was basically the second part of the question, and you needed to address it also well in order to score good marks. But this part was a bit easy because urbanization is pretty famous in IVC, and we just read it about in many sources. So planned cities was one of the features, like the Harappan cities show the elements of advanced urbanization and planning. Example, Mohenjo-daro had a planned layout with rectilinear buildings arranged on a grid pattern. So this is pretty common example which you could have used. Before Harappa, some Chalcolithic cultures have shown urban elements but have only been very limited. So both before Harappa and after Harappa, this urbanization was a bit low, like it was not as much seen as in this period. So I've talked about this. Next is flourishing trade and commerce. So whenever trade and commerce is flourishing, it shows that the urbanization is like going on in full flow. So I have talked about that too. Robust trade and commerce is an important indication of urbanization. The Harappan civilization marks a high point in trade and commerce. So this can be seen through the evidence of like seals in different parts of the world. For example, bull seal, Pasupati seal, and exchanges between Harappan and Mesopotamian civilizations are also found, like coins and seals from this period are found there, and vice versa. So this can be used as an example of flourishing trade and commerce. Next, I've talked about this urban and municipal facilities. Now, this is also a pretty common feature that you will get in most of the texts. So, I think talking about great bath, granaries. So, all of this indicate that urbanization was in proper swing. Waste collection system was also there. There was a well-maintained drainage system, and all of this you could have written. Next, I've talked about modern architecture and civil engineering. The structures like the citadel, the granaries. Now, the citadel was a raised platform, and one part of the city was raised, while the other part was on a bit bottom. And this shows that the architecture was also pretty planned. So, the structures like the citadel, the granaries, the great bath, etc., are unique and indicate engineering prowess of the Harappan people. Next, I've talked about connectivity and transportation. This we hear about the ports at Lothal and use of carts and all. So I've talked about that. The urban centers in the Indus Valley civilization were well connected with both inland and marine routes. Example, tidal port at Lothal. Evidence suggests use of wheeled carts. So all of these points like connectivity, modern architecture, urban facilities, flourishing trade and commerce, planned cities are good enough to show that urbanization was planned and it was really good in this period. And I think if you have written mentioned four or five of these, I think that was enough for this answer. Next, we move on to the conclusion part. Next, again in the conclusion, did not have to write anything new or introduce any concept. You just had it needed to emphasize upon what was given in the question itself. So Harappan civilization marked a new age in scientific advancements and urbanization. These developments also aided in its social and economic growth, making it one of the most progressive civilizations of its time. So this is just basically emphasizing upon what is being already said, because you can't write a way forward and pretty optimistic things here. This is basically a history and art and culture question, so you just need to be a bit positive about whatever we have achieved and talk on those lines. So that is basically the conclusion here. So if you had written on these lines, I think that was enough to score pretty good marks in this answer and separate you from the crowd of answers, because I think the main focus of this answer would have been the content of your answer, because the rest parts were pretty clear. Elaborate is also easy keyword, and the main demand of the question was also pretty clear. So now we will move on to checking some of the copies and look at how you have written and what all improvements we can make in our answers. So first we move to Tejaswi's copy. The archaeological remains at various sites of IBC allow us to know about its technological progress. Okay, at the same time of the Harappan civilization, upholds the fact that town planning of the upholds the fact that the civic establishments of the city were highly developed. Okay, this is fine. Like she has just picked up these 2 points and tried to introduce something from there only. You can talk about the time period if you want to talk about something new, or just give a fact on this civilization, although this will also do. Scientific advancements in Harappan civilization. Next, we move on to that part. The well-planned urban centers based on definite layout pattern with scientific roads, drainage system, public structures were much ahead of time, so precursor to the modern concept of architecture and civil engineering. So this is basically I will say points about urbanization, because you have talked about the roads, drainage system. Scientific roads is nothing, like it is just you are trying to innovate something. It was like perpendicular roads was what was followed there. So you can talk about this in urbanization. The irrigation system involved artificial reservoirs and early canal system. This point is fine. Here you can just mention some of the examples. IVC was well developed technically and possessed good knowledge of metallurgy and usual standards, burnt bricks, accurate beads, and cotton. Okay. Also, IBC were familiar with the use of wheeled on potteries. Painting and glazing of potteries was also known. Okay, they had knowledge of using lime as plaster. They used pyrotechnology for heating lime. IBC people manufactured fines by heating silica. Okay, fine. Further, they had good knowledge of furnaces and were experts in bead making. Fine. In fact, they know the art of cutting, drilling, polishing of bead. This is also decent enough. I think you can just make it a bit crisp, because you just need to give examples and move on. Like each statement does not need to be started afresh. So just talk about knowledge of furnaces, bead making, drilling, polishing, and all of that can be mentioned in one line. Next, we move on to this point. It was announced in Journal Nature in April 2006 that oldest evidence in human history for the drilling of. So you have talked about drilling already. So don't drag one point. I will say was found in Mehrgarh around 7000 BC. The tooth drilling involved curing tooth-related disorders with drills operated by. So this is like 7000 BC is not IVC. I think this point can be avoided. If you just want to show your knowledge, you can talk about that drilling of something, drilling of tooth and all was there, or you can talk about medical techniques. I think that will be a good point. Harappan civilization was the womb of mathematics, from where both the concept of numbers and the numerical system originated. The numerical system developed by the Harappans included symbols for several innovative for mathematical manipulations such as addition and multiplication. Okay, I think you are writing a lot in your points. Same thing is like repeated. Uh, if you notice, you can see you have talked about mathematics here, then again talked about innovations for mathematical manipulations. Although it is not pretty much clear, but each line has same concepts. Like you are talking about same thing in two three lines. So try to ensure be a bit crisp when you are talking about mathematics. Talk about it in one line and then give examples, and I think that should be enough. There's no need to repeat same thing in two, three lines. Innovative urban planning, Harappa in Pakistan, Kalibangan, Lothal, India are settlements of Harappans with town planning. Okay. So here you can talk about those roads and drainage system and all. Citadel Mount built on high podium of mud brick to the west. Town to the east was the main hub of the residential area, which was also surrounded by fine drainage system. So, for example, you have talked about drainage system earlier also, and again here you are mentioning. So you understand like there's no benefit of repeating points. I think that is like harmful, I'll say. Examiner will cut your marks if he finds repetition and all multiple times. Well arranged water supply system, street light system, watch and ward arrangement during the night to oust for law breaches, particular presses through trash and waste material, public walls in every street. Okay, fine. So this is okay. Again, you have talked about advanced drainage and sanitation system. Each house had horizontal and vertical drains, and the house drains were connected with road drains. There were underground drains. So I think this part could have been addressed better. Although I think the science part you have addressed well, but urbanization I think is missing. Other than drainage system, I don't think you have talked much. You can talk about those great baths and granaries. You can talk about uh, trade and commerce. So those points need to be incorporated. Try to include more dimensions. Just repeating certain points won't is not a very good idea. If you are talking about drainage, sure, take one point, write two three lines if you have pretty much good knowledge about it, and that should be it. You cannot introduce the same point in pretty much every point. Try to introduce like other dimensions in each point. For example, in this part, you can talk about trade and commerce, architecture, and all. This point can be made a bit better, and also try to underline your important things. For example, this answer looks pretty bland. So what you can do is like when you talk about scientific advancements, you can underline here. You can talk about irrigation system. You can underline here. So try using that to make it more presentable. So overall, I think your knowledge about scientific advancements is good. Urban planning, I think you need to read a bit more. Try to include more examples of granaries and all, transportation system, trade and commerce, art and architecture. So all of those things can be introduced in urban planning. Other than that, most of the things are fine. I will say conclusion is missing, I guess. Yeah, conclusion, you can write a conclusion also in this answer. So overall, I think you will get 4.5 out of 15 for this answer, Tejasvi. And bit of improvement that I have told, like avoiding repetition, including more examples, making points multidimensional, like making your subparts multidimensional will make your answer better. And try to underline some of the key points to make it more presentable. Now I'll move on to Nisha's copy. Let us see what she has written. Is also okay. Harappan Civilization is also an Indus Valley Civilization. Fine. So she has talked about the time period. This is okay. The IVC content urban and okay. This is also IVC progress in scientific advancement. Uniform weights and measures is good point. Burnt bricks is also fine. Technique of metallurgy is also good. Science of working with copper, bronze, lead, and okay, fine. They have knowledge of plants, which parts of the plants are good for them and which are poisonous to them. If you can try to give examples for such points, like otherwise it becomes like not clear what you want to say. Craft press production, cell cutting, metal. So this is again okay. So try to include more examples here. Talk about when you talk about metals, you can talk about the metals like gold, other than copper and bronze you have mentioned. But other than that, also there are multiple metals which you can talk about. You can give the example of that lost wax technique in Mohenjo-daro. So you can talk about those things. Give more examples. Mathematics, medical sciences, those all things also. More scientific dimensions can be included in this answer, I will say. Last this point is also fine. Again, you can give examples here in seal making. You can talk about the Pasupati seals and all. Next point is innovative urban planning of IVC. Okay, planned urban center is okay. Citadel, lower town, fine. Settlements used, planned and then implemented accordingly. Grid pattern is okay. Domestic architecture, main entrance, drainage system okay. Their doors were not open towards roadside despite back of the house fortified cities. Okay, structures of great bath and granaries was overwhelming. Fine. Harappan civilization was most advanced urban plan settlements, but still archaeologists. So, okay, your introduction conclusion is good. Scientific advancements part is also decent. You just need to include more examples and talk about more dimensions. And in this urban planning part, I will say that be a bit organized. When you talk about this subheading should be more clear. Like you cannot just pick a paragraph and make a point out of each line. When you talk about planned urban centers, talk about two, 3 points about talk about all those grid patterns, uh, citadel and all of that can be mentioned under planned urban centers. Next, talk about a different thing. For example, you can talk about trade and commerce. Next, you can talk about transportation. So what is happening is all of this is first, second, third, all points are uh, sub points of this thing only, a planned urban center only. So try to be a bit better organized, I will say. So drainage system, grid system, all of this is part of planned urban architecture. Other than that, what all urban qualities were there in IVC should also be mentioned. For example, those points that I have talked about in the beginning of this video, you can mention this. So overall, I think you will get still 5 out of 15 because structuring of the answer is good and most of the things are mentioned, but some examples and all would make this answer quite better. Next, we move to Ayushman's copy. The IVC or Harappan civilization was one of the three ancient East societies. Okay, fine. Scientific advancements in Harappan civilizations. Fine. Weight stones, knowledge of decimals, ivory scale with division of fine. Medicine, trepanation, fraction, drilling of teeth. Fine. Okay. Transportation. So, okay. Clothing, decorative buttons with geometric forms. Okay, fine. Metallurgy evidence. So, metallurgy you have mentioned once, no? Okay, not mentioned. So, this is fine. Evidence use of gold, silver, copper, touchstone, production of copper, bronze, lead, and tin. So you can talk about lost wax technique here in metallurgy, and moreover, you can talk about I think mathematical measurements and all. For example, you can talk about in this part when you talk about geometry and all, you can give the example of bricks, standardized measure of bricks and all. Also, I think since this is a 15 marker, there is no need to use flowcharts directly. When something is told to elaborate, go in the form of statements only in most parts. If until unless you have a lot of content and you are forced to you are short of time and space and you are forced to write in flowcharts. Otherwise, when elaborate type questions is there, try to prefer writing in points and writing the whole statements. Next, we move to innovative urban planning. Harappan civilization was the first civilization to have planned city. Okay, grid-based, fine. Demarcation of towns. This is okay. Uniform building materials, drainage. Okay, buildings at least 2 rooms. Fine. Okay. So again here, some dimensions are missing. You have again talked about most of the urban planning part. Other than that, you can talk about what all shows the advancement of urbanization. For example, this trade and commerce, and then seals and all transportation methods. Those things could have been mentioned in this answer. But still, I think the content is better than previous answers. I think you have broadened the scope of the answer, and especially the scientific advancement parts is good. The Harappan civilization and its innovations left a permanent mark on the region. For example, the measurement listed in Kotliyad or Satrama. Okay, fine. So this is also good. So I will say you will get 5.5 out of 15 for this answer, Ayushman. However, I think you had the scope to write full statements because I think content seems a bit less for 15 marker in this answer. However, the content is rich, I will say. Next, we move to Chinese copy. Harappan civilization was the first urban civilization of South Asia which arose in the okay fine Bronze Age. Archaeological remains at various sites fine okay. Scientific advancements is okay. Weight measurements in metallurgy. This is good. So see for example here she has mentioned about this. Irrigation system is also good. Pottery and bead making use pyrotechnology for okay fine. Medical science. This is also very good. Mathematics. So you can see that she has mentioned different dimensions uh, in this answer. For example, each point, no, for example, pottery, bead making, irrigation, all of them are mentioned separately, and all the points of one point are mentioned in that point only. So you also try to write in a similar pattern. Innovative urban planning methods. Okay, citadel lower part and upraised citadel lower parts is also fine. Rectangular grid pattern is also good. Building material use big bricks which were joined fine. Intelligently designed granaries. Public baths. So here again, Saini, what you can do is you can talk about these points in one part only. These are just examples of architecture basically. You cannot talk about granary in one point, again public baths in other point. So just mention that some intimidating architecture was seen in that period, and example could be granaries, great bath and all. Advanced drainage system is also okay. So again, some points are missing in this urban innovation part, although what you have done is use diagrams and all, so that makes the answer look pretty good, presentable. However, some other points about urbanization could have been incorporated in this answer. The sites of this civilization show the finest examples of urban civic planning and technological advancements, which prove that engineering skills developed during those times. So this is okay. So I think you will get 6.5 out of 15 for this answer. Especially the second part could have been a bit better. Some more dimensions could have been included. Other than that, the first part is pretty good, and most of the examples are mentioned. Some intro and conclusion is also fine, and the use of diagram is what gives you some extra marks, I'll say. Next, let us move to Neha's copy. Harappan civilization was the oldest civilization of ancient India, also known as India. Okay, fine. They are known for the okay diagram is also fine. Scientific advancements, town planning. So again, what you can do is you can separate these both of these. I think you have been written it under one subheading only, both scientific advancements and innovative urban planning methods. So that will restrict your presentation. Like what you will do, you mix and match everything. So better than that, go for writing about scientific advancements first, and then talk about urban planning methods. Transportation, irrigation system, okay. Knowledge of metallurgy is also fine. Gold, silver, copper. Again, you can mention about lost wax technique here, weight measurement and maths. So this is also fine. Examples are good. Medical science is also good. Skull surgery, trepanation can be mentioned here. Craft is also okay. Thus, Harappan civilizations are also called Sindhu Ghati Sabhyata adopted it. सिंधु घाटी सभ्यता लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है इधर, क्योंकि यू आर राइटिंग हरप्पन सिविलाइजेशन एंड आईवीसी ऑल्सो. सिंधु घाटी सभ्यता इज बेसिकली ट्रांसलेशन ऑफ आईवीसी इन हिंदी, so there's no need of writing that. Adopted a scientific, sophisticated, and sustainable method of urban planning, which indeed modern, innovative, and relevant to present times to contain. So, okay, conclusion is fine. Again, you have related it to present urbanization, so that is good. And intro is also good. What you can do in the body is separate both scientific methods and urban planning, and talk about when you talk about scientific methods, talk about this irrigation system, metallurgy, weights measures, mathematics, medical sciences, crafts. You can talk about these things in I will say scientific methods, and in urban planning you can talk about some more dimensions other than this town planning. For example, you can talk about commerce, trade, flourishing, seals and all. So you can mention that part also. So overall, I think you will get 5.5 out of 15 for this answer. Presentation of this answer will reduce some of your marks. Otherwise, I think content is decent enough. You have mentioned most of the things that was required in this answer. So that will be it for today, guys. I think I took some of the copies and tried to analyze your answers. Also, I have seen that most of you are doing peer reviews, and that is pretty good. Keep on doing that, and I think in that way also you will improve a lot over what to write and how to write. And next, again, we will meet tomorrow with a new topic and a new set of questions, and discuss it again in the evening. So, and by then you can also participate in that night owl discussion, which we talk about some current affairs related stuff there. And overall, I think the progress is good. Just keep maintaining the consistency. I think most of you break the streak after 1 or 2 days. So try avoiding that. If you keep on continuing writing, we will also get motivated and try to bring some new innovative rewards for you guys. So try doing that. And again, we will meet tomorrow. So thank you very much. And again, so bye bye. Keep answer writing, and we'll meet tomorrow again.